I'm Dee, and I'm clinically polyamorous, naturally black. I'm a licensed therapist, social worker, and all-around psychology, sociology geek who loves helping people, who loves creating new things. And welcome to my channel where we talk all things life, relationships, intimacy, and how to get where we want to be mindfully. Today, we're talking the pros and cons of polyamory. If you haven't checked out the first video I made, Polyamory 101, I highly recommend you check it out. It is a great introduction to polyamory. It has some terms that I'll define here a little bit, but a lot of it I defined in the last video. I'll define what I can here, but I'm also going to have a zine at some point with another provider, another person as well, that will have a good dictionary for polyamory and open relationships. Anyway, today, the pros and cons of polyamory. That's another big topic. It's a big topic because before changing or considering relationship structures, people want to know what they're getting out of that. You know, what's going to make a difference for them in their relationships. And what we get from them, of course, that's going to be a bit subjective, right? But there are some broad things that tend to come up in the conversation when we talk about the benefits and consequences, the pros and cons of polyamory, why we do it, why we should pause, and, well, what's the experience going to be like? So we're going to start with some benefits. One of the benefits of polyamory is the freedom to allow relationships to grow naturally. This means that you and your partners get to shape the relationships that you have into what you want them to be instead of putting them in a box. Monogamy does not have to look one way, but because the majority of us are raised in cultures where there's a very set pattern of what relationships look like, time periods in which certain milestones happen, whether certain milestones happen at all, and what makes a successful relationship, we are often moving into that box automatically and assuming other people will too, which is great if that's what we want. Now, a concept that ties into that is the relationship escalator. The short version of that is it's the idea that relationships naturally escalate. You get married, you have kids, you retire, you die. That you go from, in some cases, casually dating to being committed and exclusionary to investing in the future to that marriage. All of that's a relationship escalator. You know, it's a presumption that you want to live together. It's a presumption that you want to get legally married. All of that goes together. That is not required for a loving, beautiful relationship, which is very shocking and controversial to a lot of people. You know, there's movements in this world to go back to all of those things being mandatory, but they aren't. When we enter into non-monogamy, we begin to challenge expectations about how relationships need to look for us to feel comfortable. Polyamory is removing expectations that a relationship must look one way and instead allows us to love and care authentically in each other's presence. It is an opportunity for us to not only operate as a couple with freedom, but as an individual. And that can be a liberating thing. That can help us feel more at ease with saying, no, I'm not sure where this relationship is going. It's okay that I don't know. We're going to let it grow, and I'm going to act in the ways that most align with my spirit and my values. Instead of feeling pressured and obligated to go, oh God, we've been dating for 2 years. We better get engaged. Oh God, we've been engaged for 6 months. We better plan the wedding. Oh God, this is what this looks like. Now, part of that conversation, though, is please, 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 if you are polyamorous or not, talk to your partners as your goals evolve. It is so uncomfortable seeing partners who clearly have very different values when it comes to this aspect of interlocking their lives. People can work around it. Sometimes it means de-escalating, which can be painful. Some people, even if they're poly, prefer the breakup. But you have the freedom to make that choice. Part of that freedom is in the other benefit, which is you have trust and transparency. So that means you're communicating openly, honestly, and responsibly. Now, levels of communication can differ. Don't ask, don't tell relationships have their own unique and often individual concepts of trust and transparency. Others are far more open. If you are in a parallel polyamorous relationship or a kitchen table relationship, if every partner is involved romantically or intimately with each other, then those come with their own degrees of trust and transparency and privacy. But the bottom line is honesty, trust, and transparency are present. Monogamy doesn't always assume that. In my experience, a lot of us learn that monogamy is a dance where sometimes we're trying to get around our partner's trust. Sometimes we're trying to hide the truth. And we might be able to get away with that in monogamy. But in polyamory, there's too many people and too many circumstances that are compromised when people aren't honest. There's another type of trust as well, which is the freedom to trust each other, choosing each other. Another way, the freedom to trust your partner to choose you and for them to trust you to choose them. There isn't an innate mandatory need for it's me or them. Not every crush is a threat, not every temptation a hammer. Every mistake or fight isn't a sign the sky will come falling down on our heads and destroy our relationship and ruin our home. Polyamory is not going to save a relationship that's failing. You have to put in the work to do that, if it's worth doing and if it's possible. Sometimes it's not. But what polyamory does in terms of our relationships is it takes off some of the stress of worrying about, can you trust your partner? A lot of people will say, well, polyamory is cheating. And we're going to talk about that in so many situations, so many videos. But here's the thing, you can't cheat at a game you're not playing. You can't be mad that you're playing Chutes and Ladders while somebody else is playing Mousetrap. And they're not using the same rules. That don't make no sense. Makes no sense. Polyamory allows you to say, I'm going to trust my partner to come home. And this is where it can get tricky. When new relationship energy, which is that spark of excitement and thrill of a new connection, come into play, a lot of people don't act responsibly. And that's whether they're monogamous or non-monogamous. It doesn't matter the situation. It doesn't matter if they are cheating. It doesn't matter if they are in an open relationship. It doesn't matter if they're only seeing this one person. A lot of people have been taught to be impulsive. And another thing that can be challenging is time, energy, all the resources. But you have to be able to learn to divide them in a way that works and addresses the needs of everyone in your relationship as best as possible. And acknowledge that if you can't, you're going to say it. You're going to say it. You're going to acknowledge it. You're going to speak up. That's part of trusting each other. When we talk about trusting each other to choose, that's part of it. But a big part of it is my partners are free to love me and pursue others, knowing that I am not going to hold it against them. And I know they're not going to take off. I would say the first years of my life, when I encountered people I liked, there was a sense of scarcity. And my parents were very loving. We weren't a perfect family, but I think from a young age, that was an underlying concept. I think that is something that is very unspoken in a lot of households, in a lot of relationships. Love for children they treat as infinite, but not for other people. And that impacted my ability to trust people to choose me, along with all my self-esteem issues and the health issues I've had over the years. It really left me insecure. But what has helped in terms of my romantic life has been knowing my partner does not have to walk away from me just because they want to be with someone else. Whether that's intimately alone, whether that's romantically, whether they don't know what this friendship is and it's very blurry, I'm usually not going to care. There are exceptions, but I'm usually not going to care. And that has made me able to reevaluate my values, to reevaluate how I see myself, and to stop putting all my value in this one person. So those benefits are very transformative, at least they were for me. I mean, that brings me to another big benefit: personal growth. As a therapist, I see so many people who have grown from their relationships and who have gone from relying on them to thriving in them. In polyamory, you can't just use your relationships for your own personal value. Well, there are people who do, but it's a lot harder because it doesn't matter how many people you date. It doesn't matter how many people you don't date. At the end of the day, there's always you. Polyamory asks us to be compassionate to ourselves and to find value in ourselves in order to handle our insecurities and find ways to not put them on our partner. More on that later. The benefit of personal growth is a profound one. The amount of personal work polyamory asks of us is high. You're now juggling multiple people, and each person is gonna bring out another part of yourself. You're now being asked to be honest, transparent, to communicate even when it's hard. You're now being asked to look at your relationships, past and present, and figure out what was working and what isn't and wasn't. All of those scary things actually make us better people, better partners, and can bring us closer to actually manifesting what feels authentic in our lives, even if that authenticity takes us back to monogamy. You can't rely on these relationships to give you value by making you innately special. You have to find a way to feel valued and loved through a new measure, a new scale. I found so much of my anxiety disappeared when I realized I didn't have to be number one in all things to be worthy of love and care. The level of insecurity and stress that previous belief caused haunted me into adulthood, and I'm so glad that it has decreased so profoundly. So glad. And part of why that happened is if you're in polyamory, and this is both a pro and a con, that personal growth also requires you learning to manage your emotions and learn how to both get and give rejection. You can't run from setting boundaries anymore. If someone asks you out, and in any other circumstance you might be open to them, but right now you're polysaturated, meaning you don't have time or energy, or you're just overwhelmed in the situation you're in and don't want to take on new partners. If you're that level of polysaturated, you have to say no. You could say, if there's a point where I'm not polysaturated, I consider it. That's one thing, but you still have to say no. I have struggled all my life with no when it comes to people I love. And polyamory involves you telling people no and being more clear in a way that can be very uncomfortable, but very liberating. You know, I'll throw a no out to a minute to folks who I don't know. Do you want no? No, I don't. But for those I love, it's hard. One of the most formative experiences I have had in a relationship was after 30 minutes of me making excuses about something, a partner looked at me in the eye and basically said avoiding saying no wasn't helpful and that I needed to trust them to hear the word and manage their emotions and not be rejected by them. It is still challenging, but being able to remind myself I need to practice this has made other relationships in my life, with my family, with my friends, with my co-workers even, much more healthy. You know, another benefit of polyamory that is often talked about is, well, you don't have to load everyone up. and expect one person to carry everything. So polyamory gives you an expanded support network. Our partners don't have to rely only on us for support or to have their needs and wants addressed. There's some exception, of course. If they want to live with us and we don't want to live with them, or we can't, that's a lot harder. But in general, our partners and us have a new way forward in expanding our networks. We have a diverse group of folks to process challenging emotions with instead of putting emotional labor on one person. Because, goodness, monogamy and sexism have made that so common, where one partner, usually the femme partner, regardless of gender, is expected to carry all of these emotions and all of these responsibilities in the relationship of providing emotional labor to a large degree. And it is not balanced. Being a provider, I also work with people with all sorts of personality disorders, all sorts of mental health disorders of all kinds. And the hardest cases are the ones where someone is constantly expecting another person to carry the load. Even in dealing with trauma, a common issue can be, I keep saying this story, I want to share it, I want someone to help carry it for me, because we hope that'll help us manage. And there's times where it can, right? There's times where that can be helpful to share our pains, and we have to be mindful of when and how. There can be a lot of resentment that exists because we have one emotional outlet and they are mentally unwell themselves. They are struggling and we are expecting them to be a support. It is so important to be able to look at our social networks and have a diversity of support. And we do ourselves a disservice when we limit that, and I see it all the time. Now, I'm not saying you need 40 friends and 40 lovers. Please don't think I'm saying that. What I am saying is you need to look at your social network at any point, from friends, well, if you're monogamous or polyamorous, to relationships, and ask yourself, what amount of emotional labor am I constantly putting on people? For some of us who have different disorders or were raised a particular way, we might actually put a high amount of labor on some people, and that ain't fair. I'm not saying it's awful, I would say it's wrong, but it can be unfair. Unfair is neither good or bad, it just is. So having a polyamorous relationship can mean you have the ability to have a conversation with Tom, Dick, and Harry that is open and authentic, and you get support from each of them because you're talking to Tom, Dick, and Harry. Well, Tom's wife is in the hospital. Are you sure you're gonna want to go to him and have the long extended conversation about your dead dog? He might not have the capacity. He might not have the emotional ability. If it's a situation where, your dog is absolutely important, but if he's there worried about his wife, most of us aren't going to necessarily be able to access the level of empathy we want in a period of high stress. However, we have the other parts of the equation, Dick and Harry, who are now able to be a source of communication support for you, right? By that same measure, you have an expanded network of people, if you choose to live together, who can pull their resources. That's incredibly difficult. Most people wouldn't recommend it unless you are very, very comfortable with everyone, and you have a good ability to compartmentalize in a healthy way and set a difference between dealing with the relationship as partners or metamors versus, being landlord, landlady, roommate, co-owner, all of that. But the bottom line is that expanded social network can really open up some doors for us to create a lifestyle we want, to feel supported, not just by one person, but by multiple people. It also gives us the ability, when we are the support system, to sometimes rally the troops and give support. Instead of it just being you supporting Tom through his mom being sick in this case, and not monogamous reality, you are now able to support him through this horrible situation with his wife in a coma. Okay, you are going to get together with your friends, because you share a friend group, with his partners, because you're friendly with them, and figure out ways to support him. That might be, okay, I want to bring enough meals for him to have dinner for the week. That's a very Southern thing. That's something when I experienced when I was a kid. But that mindset, that attitude, you can bring that in and rally with everyone and bring support. And that's a wonderful thing. To be able to do that for a partner is beautiful. There have been times, because of the relationship I have, don't assume this is on the table in every polyamorous relationship, but because of the relationship I had, that I could talk to my partner's partners and check in. I have gotten messages, not invasive, not boundary crossing for those dynamics, where someone's like, hey, are they okay? I just haven't heard from them. And that's unusual. And if I'm the partner who's with them physically, or if I'm the other person they talk to every day, it might be, oh, yeah, they messaged me at one point that they were driving up to see their grandparents and they're in the mountains, so they might just not have a signal. Or I'll check and see what's going on. I've also gotten weird vibes, or I still have the right to say no, and say no through, I'm not sure what's going on, but you might want to talk to them. And sometimes I do know what's going on, and I still will say, no, I don't know what's going on, you might want to talk to them. That is where one of those, I don't want to get involved, levels of slight dishonesty can be healthy. I'm not saying do it all the time. I'm saying part of the cons we're going to get to in the next video are privacy, and learning how to approach that in a very different way can be hard. But like I just said, next video. This is the benefits part of the essay. This is going to be the super positive one. There'll probably be a part 2 to this at some point. But until then, lovely viewer, lovely listener, I hope that you keep these things in mind. It helps to bring up some conversation. And I would love, love, love if you could hit the subscribe or the like button down below. Drop a comment. I am so glad you took the time to listen to me today. And I'm Dee. I'm clinically polyamorous, naturally black. Take it easy.